Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to talk to you today. We have a session here for the three speakers, and it's a Mexico-based session. So you might even consider buying these stocks as a package. It would be a good way to do it. That way, they don't have to speak at all. I'll just stand up here and give the talk. What I'd like to do is talk to you about Orex, and it's gold and silver. And as you know, that Mexico is the #1 silver producer in the world. I'll be making a few forward-looking statements, as we all do. Orex is part of the Belcara Group, and the Belcara Group has 4 companies currently in that group. We've done it before. We've made money for investors, and that's one of the keys. We've had success with our financial and our technical team in leading exploration projects. And so that's part of the discussion here. The third talk will be on Silver Viper Minerals by Steve Cope, and Steve Cope and Silver Viper are also part of the Belcara Group. Okay. To give you a sense for where Orex stands, there are a couple of things to point out on here. Is a strong institutional basis that we do have Eric Sprott from Toronto, who's invested in the company, like he has in many precious metals companies, but he has invested in this one as well. We've got Ingalls and Snyder out of New York. We've got US Global out of Texas, the Contrarian Fund out of California. So there is a very strong institutional investment basis, and management also participates in these companies. But on here, I'd like to point out in red is a 2% net smelter return is held on a gold project in Sweden. And that seems a little different than what the projects we're talking about. It's because the Barsele Gold project used to be part of Orex, and it was a spin-out company because we wanted to get more exposure and more identity for an asset that we had in Sweden at the time. And it's a joint venture with Agnico Eagle. So currently within the Orex portfolio, there are 3 projects, and you'll see 2 of the partners' names here. Fresnio is the world's largest silver mining company. They have very few joint ventures that they undergo, but we've had one with them, and Pan American Silver is the world's 2nd largest silver mining company, and so they're our joint venture partner on the Sandra project. Durango State is where the 2 Mexican projects are, and the ones that I'm going to concentrate on. You'll find that the second speaker, when Mr. McDonald comes up to talk to you, he's also in the heart of this trend, and he has precious metals along with base metals on his Southern Silver, Cerro de las Menitas. So on this map, I point out a couple of we have here is Coneto's right in the heart of this. There's a little red dot for La Preciosa. That was part of our discovery team as well. As you move towards into Zacatecas to the south east, you see the town of Fresnillo. That's where Fresnillo got its start and its biggest silver mining project. If you move up, projecting this up to the northwest, then you'd come into a continuation of the gold and silver trends up into Chihuahua and Sonora, and that's where the Silver Viper projects are. So within Coneto, beautiful ranching country, just gorgeous, semi-arid up in the high plateau, excellent infrastructure here, and this is the village of Coneto de Comonfort. It's a window of the favorable rocks for vein-hosted silver and gold projects here. This window of the lower volcanics is about 17 kilometers by 4 kilometers, and over 50 veins have been identified in that particular camp. So the camp itself has a long history. What I'd point out to you is that even though it was found by the conquistadors 450 years ago, they could only mine down to about the water table. And the way the dynamics work in a window of the lower volcanics would mean that it would be about 70 to 100 meters. And below that, they didn't have the technology to go deeper. We are finding that the mineralized systems do go much deeper. Most recently, that SRK, the consulting group, put out our very first National Instrument 43101 resource estimate on this project. Give you a sense for what the values are like. They're different veins. They're almost all fairly steep, so the geometry is very good for it. The value overall is about half and half gold and silver. So you can see different grades. What I point out here is some of the depths on here. The depths, you can get numbers that are into the 400 meters down a drill hole, and we're still hitting mineralized veins. Okay. We did metallurgical recovery, excellent recovery. The main 5 zones that we tested here, over 93% recovery for gold. And we also got into the 80s for silver. Silver was still being recovered by this leach test after the 96th hour. So there may be ways to enhance the silver recovery as well. This was a preliminary metallurgical testing. So 106 drill holes, 38,000 meters of diamond drilling has been targeted for the 12 main targets that were on the property. And Fresnillo, our joint venture partner, is the one that spent the majority of this money. They spent $6 million to earn their interest of 55% on the project. This is what the material looks like in the upper levels. So you do have some oxidization of the material with the gold and silver. As you go down deeper, there were some beautiful textures. The geologists will look at this and say these fluids were boiling, which is important for the emplacement of minerals. And this is a deep intersection here where we're getting into the base metal roots as well. You can see that copper, lead, and zinc accompany the gold and silver in that particular sample. So the 6 zones had enough drilling to do a resource assessment. You can see they're all mostly aligned with this northwest-southeast, some that are north-south. The 6 zones brings up this first inferred mineral resource estimate. If you think about it in terms of gold, the gold equivalent is 538,000 ounces of gold equivalent for this first resource estimate. If you think of it in terms of silver, the silver equivalent would be about 40 million ounces of silver. So 286,000 ounces of gold and 19 million ounces of silver. It gives you a rough sort of a 50-50 for gold and silver there. Now, moving a little further to the north, this is the joint venture that we have with Pan American. They bought our previous joint venture partner out of their interest, and we struck the new joint venture on a project called the Sandra Project. There's a little green dot in the middle of this screen, and that green dot is our drill rig. On that hillside, there are about 65 drill holes, and it shows the care that we put in to the environmental side, that we make little tracks into the hillside so that we can bring equipment in for the man-portable rigs and leave a very small environmental footprint. But that is where the Boleros discovery was made on the Sandra project. So beautiful ranching country again. On this project, a lot of the trends are following similar trends here to the northwest and southeast. The Boleros block is towards the southeast part of the property, and that's where the resource is. We find that there's a mineralogical change as you're heading towards the northwest. And right now we're on reconnaissance drilling phases that we just finished one phase with Pan American, and we'll be discussing the next phase is as we move towards the northwest on several of these structures. So the Boleros deposit itself is silver. There's a little bit of lead, but we didn't do much on the lead. The resource estimate was based on silver, and it's right at surface. Notice the from and to in these drill holes, that the first hole that was put into that, right after the casing, we were in mineralization. And it was 61 meters of drill core, so a true thickness about 43 meters. That was all mineralized from that discovery hole for the Boleros deposit. This gives you an idea of a tabular, disseminated silver deposit that's sitting right on surface. So its resource estimate comes in at 33.3 million ounces of silver, sitting right at surface, so it would be an open pittable type geometry. In cross-section, here are a couple of cross-sections. You can see that we've interpreted the fluids to have flowed laterally in a very permeable unit, and that permeable unit, as a crystallithic tooth, would have a stripping ratio of less than 1:1. So from that geometry. This is what the material looks like. There is more work to be done on the project because this part of the property has a lot of manganese oxides and hydroxides. So there are some challenges from a metallurgical viewpoint for this part. As we move towards the northwest, we're seeing sulfides and we're seeing a change in the mineralogy. And so there will be further exploration testing that goes through. But when you pick up a rock on this property, it looks like a piece of concrete. And the concrete in the upper left sample, that's 254 grams of silver per ton, and it just looks like concrete. That's why it wasn't discovered a long time earlier, is because it doesn't have that reddish gossan that you would expect if you had a lot of sulfides. As you move towards the west, to the northwest, you do get those reddish gossans. The top picture here shows a pickup truck, and that's sitting on the Baleares deposit. The hill in the background is Cerro Rojo, so it's the red hill, and that's because of the mineralogical change. Equal distance beyond that red hill is where our property goes. So we have a big land package, about 7,000 hectares on the package. There is a small artisanal mine in the lower left there where they're hand cobbing the shiny bits. They pick out the shiny bits, throw them into barrels, put them on a truck, and send it directly to the smelter. So that shows that there are some high-grade material areas on the property. We have our drill core shed here that's all set up for diamond drilling and recording. One project that we didn't talk about so much because it's in British Columbia and it doesn't really fit the rest of the portfolio of properties is one called Jumping Josephine. And Jumping Josephine is in British Columbia. It has a small gold resource, and we're considering it for monetizing that asset, that making it available for people to review and as a saleable asset, either for direct sale or for optioning of Jumping Josephine. So it has about 64,000 ounces of gold sitting in a nice plum right near surface, just north of Teck smelter operations and Trail. And it's about 15 minutes drive from Castlegar, if people know that area. So the mineral resource summary for our 3 projects, because we have shared partners in there, our total that is attributed to Orex today is about 36 million ounces of silver equivalent. So this gives the breakdown. So Sandra is a 60-40, Canetto is a 55-45. We own 100% of the Jumping Josephine. So on Canetto, the current activities, we did the metallurgical test and the mineral resource estimate. SRK has recommended a further $6.4 million program on that, and that's under discussions with our joint venture partners as to how Fresnillo would like to move forward. On Sandra, we've got the mapping and the lithogeochemical program has been completed now. We just completed the phase 1 drilling program with our new joint venture partners, Pan American, and we're undergoing the planning for the next phase. Community engagement's important. I haven't put very many slides about community engagement, but we do pay attention to the ESG, and we have for years on these. We planted trees in the schoolyards. We fixed some of the presas, the dams, for the local ranchers. And we encouraged the involvement of the local ejido councils and the communities to have a healthy environment in that area. So that's something that people want to hear about, is the ESG. We've been doing that for decades. You know, how you quantify that in today's reporting is another factor, but the community engagement is certainly one that we're doing. Acquisitions is an important part, and I would like to see another project in Mexico added to the Orex portfolio. I really appreciate the team at Red Cloud because they've made introductions as well to other companies who might have assets that would be suitable for us, as well as our assets suitable for other companies. So this kind of a networking environment is of value, and we really appreciate the Red Cloud team for making these kinds of connections, not just with the investors, but from company to company. Okay. So in summary, we have 3 projects, primarily in Mexico, but 2 strong mining jurisdictions. Joint venture partners are with the biggest players in the market. Presence in Durango, we've had an office in Durango for about 18 years down in that city, so we've got a team there and we know the area. That strong technical team will know the communities as well as the geology and the services that are available. And our team, as a management team, has been successful in making discoveries. So what I do say here in all seriousness is there is more to be discovered. I thank you very much.